Welcome to the IB Times UK TV. I'm Vanessa Keller. Today we'll be previewing Liverpool's January transfer window activity. From the players coming in and out to the budget available to Brendan Rodgers and just how much of a difference these changes are going to make to the Reds' position come the end of the season. So let's start with what Brendan Rodgers has said so far. And he's been very clear about the fact that they're going to be busy come 1st of January. Adrian, do you think the hurt is still really raw over the fact that they couldn't land a striker in the summer transfer window?
Yeah, I mean, from the way they've played, it has seemed to have made a difference. They're a bit unfortunate when Fabio Borini picked up his injury, because it meant Luis Suarez is basically the only striker they've got at the club now, or certainly the only fit senior striker, and it's made it difficult. Missing out on the guys they were chasing and letting Andy Carroll go has possibly looked a bit of a mistake. Their league position obviously shows that. They've really struggled for goals. I think what's been even clearer has been how much they've struggled to bring someone off the bench to influence the game. We looked at them so far this season, more than 10 games gone, and they hadn't scored a single goal in the last 15 minutes of a game. I mean, that's crucial. That's when you're relying on a substitution, you're relying on a striker or a midfielder or an attacking presence to come on and make a difference. It's something that Man United and Man City do week in, week out. Liverpool struggled to do that, and without a striker or without a backup for Suarez, yeah, they really have struggled, and it's looking a mistake to let Carroll go.
So just moving on to the budget for January, and Rodgers and the owners have been pretty honest about the fact that there's not very much money to spend. Nick, how much is a realistic figure that you think that they can spend on new players?
Well, firstly, I think the fact that there's no money to spend is actually a little bit of a myth. If you look at the amount of money they spent in the summer, I think they were the 5th highest spenders in the league, and only the last season's, and the big four really were above them in terms of their net spend as well. That was only 10 million more than the summer before, when we thought they'd spent very, with no frugality at all. It was very much misfiring. So as far as the money they've got to spend, I don't think there'll be a great deal. But we must take into account the fact that they played hardball over Clint Dempsey. I don't think it was purely a financial situation there. They just tried to be clever and they got caught out in the end. It's difficult to put a total figure on it, but I think we'll see Liverpool spending, but I don't think it'll be a great deal of amount, and at the end of the day we don't normally see teams spending too big in January anyway.
Well, one thing that will help them is players possibly going out in January. Guys, who have you got so far that you think are definite going to leave?
Well, yeah, it's a difficult one, because you look at the players that will leave. If you're talking about generating money, I don't think there's anyone there that they'd want to sell that would generate the sort of cash to let them bring someone else in. Two players I think perhaps likely to leave: Joe Cole. He's struggled ever since he joined Liverpool. He's just not quite clicked. The injuries have obviously played a factor in that, but who's really going to be willing to buy Joe Cole? It could be difficult to sell him. And of course the other one, I guess, will be Stuart Downing. Another one that's not impressed Brendan Rodgers in the slightest. There's competition for his place now. Raheem Sterling seems to have cemented it, and now Jose Enrique's even preferred to him at left wing, while Downing's had to perform at left back. So I think if an offer arrives, there's been talk of maybe Middlesbrough trying to get him on loan. If that, I could possibly see that happening, or they may even make an offer, and I think Liverpool would accept.
So players coming in. Nick, we'll start with you. Who have you got at the top of your list that you think Rodgers will be chasing?
Well, I think looking at someone like Darren Bent, an irony being linked with him, given that 12 months ago Liverpool were in for a £24 million move, and now it appears that they're looking to try and get him in on loan. A word of caution: I don't think he's a Rodgers sort of player. I don't think he's particularly good on the ball. He's a little bit lazy as well, and really only comes alive in the 6-yard box, really, which can be as much of a positive as it can be a negative. For a Rodgers team that like to play football a lot, that could perhaps be a negative, but Liverpool needs someone to take their chances. Other players that perhaps they need, and as much as an additional striker might be helpful, someone in a wide position, someone in the role of someone like Daniel Sturridge, who's not getting many games at Chelsea at all. I think the issue there might be the fact that I don't see Chelsea bringing in many players themselves during January, with Rafa Benitez having only just joined. They may well be reluctant to let go of Sturridge. The final one would be Theo Walcott, of course, yet to agree a new deal at Arsenal. I think if he's going to leave the club, the incentive for Arsenal to sell him would be in January and not in the summer, when they're going to get something of a nominal fee for him.
Adrian, can you add to that list at all?
Yeah, I mean, as Nick pointed out, most of these, or all of those guys, based in the Premier League. If Rodgers wants to look a little bit further afield, there are a couple of players that might be available out there. We've already mentioned that the budget might not be too high, and if he's looking for someone on the cheap, there's two strikers in particular that he might be interested in. You've got Klaus-Jan Huntelaar, who obviously is coming towards the end of his contract at Schalke. That's the guy that scored 49 goals last season. he scored all throughout Europe. He'd definitely be the sort of player that Brendan Rodgers would like. The only problem I see is that is he going to be willing to trade a Champions League club to come and play for Liverpool? Possibly a bit unlikely. Another one, of course, is Fernando Llorente, the Spanish forward, who, again, he's coming towards the end of his contract. He could agree a deal in January to move on a free, or perhaps Liverpool could put in a slightly lower offer and be able to get him away. And the handy thing is, with Bilbao, they're not quite a massive club. Liverpool might still have some of that draw. Some people might say that he couldn't fit into the Rodgers style. He's a big, powerful forward, but of course we see him playing for Spain as well. So he could suit the system. I think Llorente could be one to look out for.
So just looking at the moment, Liverpool is struggling quite a bit in terms of their selection. Luis Suarez has got a lot of pressure on his shoulders, providing the majority of goals and contributing to the majority of the goals at the club. How much of a difference do you think it's going to make if they bring in a striker in January to their league position at the end of the season?
Well, I think traditionally in the Premier League you do see teams coming strong at the end, and normally that actually dictates where they finish. And you only need to look at Everton, who have, okay, not this season, but famously had poor starts and ended up finishing well and perhaps qualifying for Europe. You know, I think the same could well work with Liverpool, given the philosophy that Rodgers has tried to bring in. It's going to take time to bring that, and I think in the last couple of months we'll probably see that coming to fruition. If Liverpool can finish somewhere between 10th and 6th, I think they can deem themselves not had a bad season.
Adrian, agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the January window is going to make a massive difference on the outcome at the end of the season. I think more to the point, it's just working with Rodgers, learning his philosophy. They've been on quite a good run of late. They haven't lost anywhere near as many games at the start of the season, haven't dropped quite as many points. I mean, currently you can see them putting together a string of results. As Nick said, once January gets out of the way, that's when you're sort of into the meat of the season. If they can sort of push on and continue a good run of results, they can just find some more goals from somewhere else in that team. I genuinely think they could possibly push for 6th this season.
Nice. Well, thanks a lot, guys. That's all we've got time for. Don't forget to go to ibtimes.co.uk/sports for all the latest sports news.